So today we are here to talk about our work with the Baton of Hope, a charity that is focused on raising awareness of suicide in the UK and preventing more people from being lost to suicide. We worked on this project during their tour last year. James, you were leading on the project, so can you tell us a bit more of an overview of the charity and its background?
Sure. So the Baton of Hope was founded by a grieving father, a guy called Mike McCarthy, who lost his son to suicide. And as a journalist for 35 years plus, he realised that he'd never covered a story about suicide. And that's quite scary when you consider that it is the leading killer of young people. It takes the lives of over 6,000 people in the UK every year. And it therefore became his mission and that of the charity to change the complete lack of media attention that the subject got. And he was helped along the way, word of mouth. The conversation started growing and spread. A company called Thomas Light picked up this conversation. They're jewellers to the royal family, goldsmiths to the crown. They offered to craft this beautiful physical baton, this amazing metre-long piece made of gold and silver with all sorts of symbolic items within it, as a symbol of hope to those affected by suicide, whether they lost someone themselves or been affected by their own mental ill health. So that became the Baton of Hope. So fascinating charity. Meghan, you've worked for charities directly. Perhaps talk us through why this was a little bit different.
Yeah, it definitely was really different. I mean, most charities, their primary objective is to raise funds. And obviously Baton of Hope still had that. They, work with various other charities to try and raise awareness and hopefully get funds for them. But as you said, their primary objective was actually to raise awareness, particularly, as you said, it's a taboo subject, despite the fact that actually it's a huge topic. There isn't that much talked about around it. People still feel uncomfortable about it. So I think it was a really interesting job for us to essentially try and tell those stories on their behalf, rather than the only call to action being donate, donate. It's talk to people, have a conversation with someone that you might not have normally had. So I think for us it was a very different job than we're used to potentially for a charity, and it meant their objectives were slightly different. And I think for them, when we started working with them, they were at that kind of initial point where they knew they wanted to do something, they had some objectives, but they really needed to kind of nail down their message and work out what exactly are they trying to achieve. Obviously they wanted to drive change in government, but what is their key message that they want to get out? And I guess that's where we came in, and obviously you ran a messaging workshop with them. I don't know if you want to talk about kind of what you went through in that workshop with them.
Yeah, sure. So as you say, the charity, when we joined with the charity came on board to support their communications, it was quite a very fledgling organisation. It was granted charity commission status in May, the same month that we came on board, and then the tour that we've referenced started 6 weeks later. So they were very much in their initial stages, and the core group of the charity was a very small group of people. What they did incredibly well, incredibly successfully, was bring together this huge network of volunteers across the country in order to facilitate this tour, and that meant 12 cities in 12 days. There was therefore 12 individual sub-committee groups within each city, but the scale of this network meant that the group as a whole was very disjointed. So with the individual cities having these conversations, there were lots of different directions that people wanted to go in. There were links into local councils. Some people wanted to bring their local MP into as a spokesperson, but we reinforced the importance of having the baton bearers as the key storytellers, because it was the human element, the personal, the powerful stories that were going to be the catalyst, if you like, for attracting the media attention, which then grew over the course of the tour. City specifically, though, we divided the liaison, if you like, with each of the cities across the team. Meg, you took a couple of the cities on yourself. Perhaps talk us through the challenges, the experience, the outcomes, how it sort of materialised in terms of dealing with those cities.
Yeah, so as you said, kind of for our team, we split them between us. I had one of the big ones, which was Milton Keynes. And I think, as you kind of alluded to, I think what made this challenging but also exciting was that there were almost so many stories to tell. You know, quite a lot of the time, sometimes we might have it with clients where they're not quite sure what their stories are, whereas we almost had the opposite problem in a good way, in the fact that, you know, these baton bearers had incredible stories. There were people within those cities that had incredible stories or wanted to kind of get the message out. So I think for us, it was trying to kind of bring everyone under the same umbrella, whereby everyone wanted to do similar things, but just making sure that we had consistency when we were talking about messaging. Obviously, we wanted to ensure that kind of when you read about them in the papers, it was all with the same kind of tone and messaging, which obviously is what we do, is our bread and butter. But I think it was a particularly interesting one for us in the fact that we weren't just dealing with two people who ran the charity. We were actually dealing with, however many cities, however many people within those cities. So
It must have been 50 people easily.
Yeah, it must have been easy. And it was lovely because they were all so enthusiastic and so wanted to be involved. But sometimes it's that too many cooks and trying to be like, I know you want to be involved and that's great, but we just need to ensure that we're all on the same page. So yeah, I think it was really good for us as a team, actually, as an exercise to see, you know, can we make all of these moving parts come together and communicate between each other as well, because I'll be having a conversation about Milton Keynes and someone else will be having a conversation about Belfast, and just making sure we're talking to each other. And obviously as part of that was kind of trying to also manage and monitor what was going on in the media, which obviously, Rebecca, you were involved in a lot more with. So I guess that was also a lot of moving parts and trying to make sure that you were kind of monitoring all of it and keeping track.
Yeah, it definitely was a lot of moving parts, especially with like the very wide variety of media that we were getting people into. So it wasn't just like newspaper coverage, it was also radio broadcasts, it was TV broadcasts, and a lot of the time these are live segments that you needed to catch at the time. So not only was it like for the people who were arranging all the cities, like making sure people were in the right place at the right time to get the broadcast, it was also making sure that we were there watching and recording to make sure we got everything, and then also making sure that of the media that we were gathering, that it was all still aimed towards promoting the initiative of the Baton of Hope and making sure that, again, the message stayed consistent. For me in particular, I felt the stories come through very, very clearly. Just reading such a wide variety of stories over that 12 days when we were gathering it, and even after, when a lot of the media coverage was still going on, it really kind of, at least for me, it really hit home the power of the Baton of Hope's initiative and how important it really was. I feel like we did have to be quite careful ourselves just with what we were consuming as well, because it is such a difficult subject. And
there was an element of safeguarding needed.
Yeah, there was.
In terms of the emotions that were shared and the conversations that were had.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like with all of us as well, I don't know about anybody's individual stories on the team, but for me, I know people who have suffered from mental ill health as well, who have really struggled, and so I felt very connected to the initiative as well, and I really, really wanted to kind of do my bit. James, you went on the tour in London as well, so that must have been even closer.
Yeah, the phrase "cut the tension with a knife" comes to mind in the power of it and the emotions, that you could almost touch them, and the physical touch of the baton, of course, being able to hold it and pass it from baton bearer to baton bearer was incredibly important. And a number of celebrities, sports stars, musicians, famous faces of all kinds helped convey this message, one of whom was Dr. Alex George, the former Love Island star, is now the UK mental health youth ambassador, and he lost his brother to suicide 3 years ago, I believe it was. And when he was passed the baton, you could see him welling up. He had to take a moment to just compose himself, reflect on the magnitude and the significance of what it all meant, and the fact that this was now a conversation that could be had. And that then was no less the case for the organising committee and the project leads from each city who were invited to Downing Street. And this culmination of the tour, we talked about driving change and engaging with government a moment ago. When we arrived at 10 Downing Street, we were invited by MP who was a supporter of the initiative to present the baton to a lady named Maria Caulfield, who's the Minister for Mental Health, and she invited the Baton of Hope to contribute to the government's suicide policy. And Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, also recorded a video, a personalised video to Mike, the founder.
I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has made this the biggest suicide prevention initiative we've ever seen. It's tragic that suicide is the biggest cause of death for under 35s, but your Baton of Hope can change that, and this government will do everything we can to help you.
It really was of such major significance to the people involved to have that recognition. But of course, the conversation needed to continue. It didn't just end there. And Rebecca, you sort of took up the mantle from a social media perspective, keeping that conversation going.
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge to kind of consider how we could keep the momentum going with it after the tour, because the tour was such a big thing. It was a national conversation. Everyone was involved, and it's like, well, what comes after? And obviously, as well, the tour really did take a lot out of people as well, because it was such an emotional thing. It was in such a compact space of time, and so we really needed to think about what was possible to do after. And as you said, we decided to go with social media and driving it through social media. And the way we decided to kind of go about it was by continuing to use the personal stories of the people who were involved in the tour, and also the wider support network of the Baton of Hope. So particularly the baton bearers, people like Nick Jamata, Fancy Dress Dad, who does a lot of speaking about mental health in the workplace. David Hickson, who leads Survivors of Bereavement by Suicide in the Isle of Man, which is a very local charity, but it makes sure that people who have suffered from the loss of a loved one can still have people to reach out to, because that obviously impacts you as well. And then we also spoke to a lot of partner organisations such as Ripple, which is a charity that creates an internet pop-up that can be downloaded onto your computer, and then it will, whenever it sees that you're searching for something harmful online, it will create a pop-up to block you from looking into that and direct you to mental health support that you can find, which is an incredible initiative that was started by Alice after she lost her brother and found out he was searching for ways he could harm himself online, and the widespread information that is very sadly out there. And then also the sponsors as well. So one sponsor that we interviewed was Alstom, who are a transport manufacturing company. They specifically work in rail, and they're really keen on implementing mental health support in the workplace. So all of these organisations, such a wide people, or such a wide variety, we really wanted to continue bringing those people in. So we decided to conduct a series of video interviews that we could then edit and upload onto social media for people to continue to connect with and actually get to know more about the people who were behind the tour as well, and behind the Baton of Hope's success, and who were invested in continuing that initiative as well. It's really wonderful that we were able to help them in the way that we were, I think.
I think a lot of people struggle if they have experiencing mental ill health. They don't know where to go, they don't know where to turn, and actually highlighting those different services, whether it's just a local group, support group on the Isle of Man, or a technology on the internet that can protect you from harmful searches. Talking about those services and interviewing the people behind them was an incredibly important initiative to take on once the overall conversation was underway.
Yeah, I think it really goes to show how Baton of Hope really was kind of like an umbrella in a way for everything else. So it's, we bring out the national conversation, talk about the Baton of Hope, and then from there it trickles down to, okay, what can we do locally? Who can we speak to? Who's there to help and provide support? And that's the wonderful thing about this whole initiative, is that it's not only about talking about suicide and raising awareness of the problem of suicide in the UK and how widespread this issue is, but also about saying these are the people you can turn to for help.
I think the fact, and Rebecca also, you were talking about how everyone can relate to the subject, and I think that's very important. Everyone is, or the vast majority of people, have either been affected by suicide or have experienced their own mental ill health, or perhaps they know of a friend of a friend. They might be sort of one step removed, but I think most of us know someone who has taken their own life tragically. And that meant that the conversation was there to be had. We just needed to have it. And again, we've talked about the tragic yet incredibly powerful stories of all of the people involved. That was what was the fuel, if you like, for the media fire in terms of getting that conversation started, putting these people in front of cameras, microphones, what have it. That was really what facilitated the whole thing in terms of that awareness, that starting that conversation. And then objectively, we talked about engaging government. I don't think we could have hoped for anything better than the Prime Minister himself recognising the tour and saying it was the biggest suicide prevention initiative we have ever seen, and the Baton being invited to contribute to government policies on the subject. So I think in our wildest dreams, I don't think we could have imagined the impact, the scope of the initiative when we set out to support the charity. And I think it really was an honour and a privilege to be a part of it.